The boy's name is Takuya. He once heard that dreams are born from repressed desires, and he had just dreamt of his late family. So what exactly is his desire? While he was pondering this, a teacher came to call Takuya to class. According to her, he often skipped school. The teacher also expressed her condolences for the recent passing of Takuya's father. However, he didn't seem to care much. At least now he had some news instead of the man just disappearing forever. Dying in a cave during his research was something Takuya had anticipated for his father. Besides calling him to class, the teacher also had another request. A new student had just transferred to the school, and she wanted Takuya to keep an eye on them. He found it bothersome and a waste of time, but when the teacher added that the student was a fresh and pretty girl, Takuya instantly agreed. Just then, an announcement came over the PA system, calling for Takuya to meet them in the history research room. Interestingly, the announcer addressed him as Sir. On his way there, Takuya met a boy named Yuki. Yuki persistently tried to convince Takuya to return to the kendo club. Takuya refused, saying he had only practiced the sport for his father's sake, and now that his father was gone, he had no reason to continue. On the other hand, Yuki was active in many clubs, especially the History Research Club. When they reached the research room, they met Mio. Takuya and Mio immediately started teasing and bickering. Tired of arguing with him, Mio dragged Yuki away. Takuya went inside to find the person who had summoned him. After waiting a while, someone finally arrived, and to his surprise, it was Ayumi, his stepmother. It turned out the announcement had actually called for Azumi, not Takuya. They had summoned Ayumi regarding the geotech construction project, which was experiencing strange occurrences. She might have to inspect the site near the beach after the meeting. Then, the person who had requested Ayumi's presence appeared. It was Professor Ryuzuji. He told Takuya he didn't need to leave, as he had something to discuss about Takuya's father. Ryuzuji had worked with him for many years on his research, and now wished to continue his work in his honor. If both Takuya and Ayumi agreed, he hoped she could send him the father's research notes. He also asked if the father had entrusted either of them with anything special. They both had nothing. Takuya was curious and learned that the professor was referring to an artifact. After the meeting, Takuya encountered Mitsuki. They were quite close and didn't use honorifics. It was revealed that Mitsuki had once been Professor Ryuzuji's secretary, but had become a substitute teacher due to exhaustion. She mentioned hearing about his father's passing and expected him to be sad, but he remained calm. When Takuya asked, "What if I were sad?" Mitsuki whispered into his ear that she would comfort him. Then she walked away. That afternoon, as school ended, a reporter stopped Takuya to ask about the construction project his stepmother was overseeing. Takuya replied that the project was near the beach and was causing the beach to disappear. He joked that if he could no longer see girls in swimsuits because of that, it would be a real shame. When he got home, he found a box on the table. Excited, Takuya thought it was an adult toy and eagerly opened it, only to be disappointed when he found something strange inside. Then he received a strange phone call from Yuki. Yuki and Mio were studying something together. She was taking notes from a rock formation and found a flower growing from it. Meanwhile, Takuya was examining the bizarre object. On TV, the same reporter was broadcasting news about local opposition to the geotech project. They even aired a clip of Takuya's earlier joke. During the broadcast, just as Ayumi was trying to calm the crowd, a massive lightning strike occurred behind her, causing an explosion. Worried for his stepmother, Takuya rushed to find her. There were casualties, but luckily Ayumi was unharmed. A site supervisor named Hideo then came to escort Takuya out of the restricted area. Takuya, being stubborn, resisted, so Hideo left the two to talk. Takuya commented, "So, this is the useless guy Mom talked about?" Ayumi then told him to go home. She wouldn't be back that night. While heading out to get his bike, Takuya ran into Mio and Yuki again. They described the lightning as being highly unusual while they were on the island. Suddenly, a girl appeared, warning them it was dangerous and advising them to stay away from the site. The next day, everyone was excited to meet the new student. When the teacher brought her in, Takuya jumped out and stripped to shock everyone, but no one was scared. The girl introduced herself as Kana and was assigned to sit next to Takuya. Out of nowhere, Kana told Takuya to stop his mother from continuing the construction, or a terrible accident would happen. After school, Takuya went to the research room to ask Professor Ryuzuji about the artifact, but the professor was busy, so he went home. There, he received a package. Inside was a book on the theory of parallel worlds and the construction of a reflection device. Upon opening it, he saw an image that resembled the artifact. It was called the reflector device. At the bottom of the package was a letter from his father. In the letter, his father revealed he wasn't dead, just missing. He asked Takuya to collect certain gemstones and go to a place called Kenomisaki. Someone would be waiting for him there that very night. Without hesitation, Takuya took off. At the site with the 2 stone slabs, hoping to meet his father, he instead found a blonde girl unconscious. He went to check on her. When she awoke, she looked overjoyed and kissed Takuya before vanishing. Just then, Ayumi and Professor Ryuzuji appeared behind him. The professor claimed that everything had gone exactly as Takuya's father predicted. He had left behind something that allowed Takuya to cross through a dimension called enorme. His father had discovered a law that governed the world, and Takuya's mother had been his inspiration. The professor insisted that Takuya's parents were still alive in another world, and that Takuya himself was the proof. Then he drew a gun and demanded Takuya hand over the artifact. Takuya asked if the artifact could really help him reunite with his parents. The professor confirmed it. It was the only device capable of revealing the infinite variations of space-time. Suddenly, a resonant phenomenon occurred. Earthquakes and lightning erupted. The professor guessed the blonde girl must have done something before disappearing. Still, he tried to seize the artifact. In that moment, time froze. Takuya saw Kana in the distance. Then, he was transported back to the stone slabs. Thinking he had hallucinated, Takuya returned to his room to sleep it off. The next day, he woke up at 8:34 a.m. on May 26, 1994. He rushed to school to confront Professor Ryuzuji about last night. But the professor claimed that he and Ayumi had been in meetings for days. Takuya felt something was seriously off. Takuya went up to the school rooftop to take a look at the book about parallel worlds. He began to study the function of the artifact. First, it could rewind time, similar to a game checkpoint. You just needed to save the point you wanted to return to and then trigger it. Second, anything he carried with him would also travel back in time. Takuya recalled a conversation he had with his father. They had talked about how history could affect timelines, referencing the grandfather paradox. As he continued reading, Takuya learned from the book that the reflector device was what allowed users to travel between parallel worlds. While he was deep in concentration, Takuya didn't notice Kana silently watching him. Startled, he quickly left. At the end of the school day, teacher Eriko announced that summer vacation officially began that day and reminded her students to finish their homework. Afterward, Takuya headed to the research room and asked Mio and Yuki whether he had come by yesterday. Both confirmed that he had, and that he was looking for Professor Ryuzuji. Still unsure, Takuya called his stepmother to ask whether she and the professor had spoken when she handed over his father's project. She confirmed it and said she had agreed to give him the research notes. However, since there were many personal items in them, she had asked Takuya to sort through everything before passing them on. Since he wasn't busy, he agreed. He even invited Mio and Yuki to come over and help. On their way home, the three of them discussed the recent string of strange incidents occurring in the city. Upon reaching Takuya's house, they entered his father's study to begin sorting through the materials. During this, Takuya found a locked cabinet. Meanwhile, Mio discovered that Takuya's father had been pursuing a theory about a 400-year historical cycle. According to him, Japanese history undergoes a major shift every 400 years. Around 1600, the Edo shogunate was established. Around 1200, the Kamakura shogunate. Around 800, the capital was moved to Nara and Kyoto. And around 400, the Yamato court unified Japan. A common thread in these events, according to him, was that foreign influence played a key role in triggering change. He believed that Japanese traditions were largely brought in by outsiders. For this, he had faced heavy criticism. Eventually, the three finished organizing everything. Seeing that it was still early, Mio suggested they hike up Triangle Mountain. There, they went to the site with the 2 ancient stone slabs and unexpectedly ran into Kana, who was placing flowers there. Mio asked why she did that, but Kana silently walked away. Mio resumed taking notes from the inscriptions. The slabs had stood there for 8,000 years, and the writings on them might even predate the 4 great ancient civilizations. On the way back down the mountain, Takuya saw Hideo, the site supervisor, being confronted by a group of workers over the lightning incident that had resulted in a fatality. Hideo denied giving the order and shifted all the blame onto his superior, Takuya's stepmother. Takuya also found out that Hideo had acted without her approval. Worse yet, Hideo told the group to stop going up Triangle Mountain because the stone slabs were going to be destroyed. Mio protested, saying they were a cultural heritage of the city, But Hideo claimed he had permission from the mayor and they had no authority to stop it. However, he didn't realize Mio was the mayor's daughter. Upon hearing that, the cowardly Hideo panicked and fled the scene, not wanting to stir up trouble. That night, Takuya came home and found a note from his stepmother saying she wouldn't be home. He made himself some instant noodles for dinner. As he lay watching TV, he kept thinking about the previous day's events. Then, he went to the research facility to find his mother. The guard told him she had just left for the company that rented scientific equipment. Takuya headed to a warehouse, where he found his stepmother being threatened by two thug-like men demanding she hand over the company's documents. Before stepping in, Takuya saved a checkpoint. He then rushed in to protect her, but realistically, no high schooler can beat up two gangsters. To protect him, his stepmother gave them the documents. However, the men weren't satisfied and intended to assault her. Takuya charged in, but was knocked out with a single punch. Refusing to give up, he used the artifact to rewind time and try again. This time he brought a wooden stick, but was beaten by both thugs again. On his third try, he brought in his motorbike, but that was also useless. Just as he was about to rewind again, Hideo unexpectedly showed up, like he was following a script. Shockingly, with just a few awkward movements, Hideo scared the two thugs off. He then helped Takuya and his mother back home. He promised to help any time she needed it, and left. That evening, the two sat down for a talk. She was saddened that Takuya kept rushing into danger, but was also proud that he had grown up. Still, she asked him to stop taking such reckless risks. After all, they were the only family each other had left. The next day, Takuya attended summer school. Yuki tried once again to convince him to join a club, but Takuya brushed it off. He was still sore from crashing his motorbike. Wanting to skip school, he asked Yuki to go in his place while he thought it over. Later, Takuya stopped by the infirmary and ran into Kana and teacher Eriko. He happened to notice Kana's necklace and felt he had seen someone wearing a similar one when he was a child. He asked her about it. Kana said it wasn't just jewelry. It was the flame of her life. Then she left. Eriko mentioned that Mitsuki was looking for him on the rooftop. Mitsuki wanted to ask what Takuya planned to do after graduation. Through their conversation, it was revealed that Mitsuki had once loved Takuya's father, but he didn't return her feelings. She was now in charge of recording his research. She also mentioned that Professor Ryuzuji had been acting very strange lately, becoming harsher, almost like he was a different person. He had become obsessed with the research, almost as if he were possessed. Takuya said he'd keep an eye on the professor and would let her know if anything happened. Later, Takuya got a call from his stepmother. She had forgotten some important documents at home and asked him to bring them to her. When he arrived at the research facility, there was already a crowd protesting outside. The guard escorted Takuya in. On the way, he ran into Hideo. Hideo offered to deliver the documents for him, but Takuya refused. He brought them directly to his stepmother, who was grateful but had to rush to a press conference. Meanwhile, Hideo secretly stole a copy of the documents. At the press conference, Takuya saw the same female reporter from earlier. She recognized him as the son of the famous doctor. They looked very much alike. During the meeting, his stepmother presented data on the recent lightning fatalities and proposed a protective suit as a solution. However, many family members of the victims claimed the suits were ineffective and protested loudly. The press conference ended in chaos. She didn't return home until late at night, drunk. Takuya helped her inside to drink some water. She opened up about how worn out she was with everything. She hugged Takuya, as if trying to release all her pent-up pressure. The next day, Hideo called Takuya's mother for something important, but Takuya picked up and let him wait. On Mio's side, her father had decided to send her to study abroad in the US to avoid the recent scandals. She was deeply saddened. Even when Takuya teased her at school, she didn't react. Unbeknownst to them, someone suspicious was watching them from behind. At school, Takuya ran into the journalist who had interviewed Professor Ryuzuji. Coincidentally, she also had something to discuss with him. The journalist was investigating the geotech project and the collusion between Godek and the mayor. She wanted to know about Takuya's stepmother's job and whether Mio, the mayor's daughter, knew anything. Takuya refused to betray his friends, but she said she didn't need betrayal. The mayor was the one in the wrong. Didn't Takuya want his friend to stay on the right path? She handed Takuya her business card. Her name was Kaori. After days of skipping school, Takuya returned to summer class. He looked at Kaori's business card again, and surprisingly, someone had written on the back a warning. Be careful with that scumbag Hideo. Uneasy, Takuya rushed home but was stopped by Eriko. Realizing he couldn't escape, he saved a checkpoint there. Later, an announcement called Takuya for a phone call. It was from his mother's manager. They said she hadn't shown up at the research facility. When Takuya asked what happened, they wouldn't say much, only that her project might involve illegal activity. Worried, Takuya ran home, only to find Hideo inappropriately touching his mother. Furious, he hit him, but his mother stopped him and even slapped him. Seeing her care more for that scumbag, Takuya stormed out in anger. He met with Kaori and asked her about Hideo. Clearly, something was wrong. Kaori took him to a hotel to talk. Coincidentally, in the next room, Kana was meeting the man who had been spying on Takuya and Mio earlier. Kaori revealed that Takuya unknowingly knew about secret data that had just been stolen from Geotech. His mother would be fired and held responsible. Some believed she had sold it. Kaori knew it was a setup. She needed to infiltrate Geotech to prove his stepmother's innocence. What Takuya needed to do was swap his mother's blue access card with a fake. Kaori left the choice up to him, but the information would soon go public, and it wouldn't be in her favor. Piecing everything together, Takuya realized who had framed his mother. He rushed home, but it was too late. Everything was chaotic, and he found his mother dead in the bathroom. She had taken her own life. He tried to resuscitate her, but it was too late. Looking at her cold body, Takuya made a decision. For the first time, he thanked his father. Then he returned to the checkpoint. This time, Takuya beat Hideo up and kicked him out of the house. Hideo threatened to get him arrested and ran away. Thinking it was over, Takuya went to check on his mother, but again, she had committed suicide. Confused, he returned to the checkpoint. This time, he dragged his mother away from Hideo and told her everything about the bastard's plan, that he just wanted her body. But he had no proof. His stepmother said he didn't understand. Everything she did was for a reason. Tired of everything, she jumped into the road and was killed by a truck. Refusing to accept this fate, Takuya continued going back in time to save her. But no matter what he did or how many times he tried, the outcome was the same. His mother always died. Desperate, Takuya turned to the Book of Parallel Worlds. It spoke of the Wozuchai radius. Certain events in the official timeline were immutable, meaning that no matter what changes or interventions occurred, these events must happen for the universe or story to remain coherent. In other words, his mother's death was inevitable. This theory enraged Takuya, but he refused to give up. He took her blue access card and used a checkpoint to meet Kaori. He agreed to exchange the real card for a fake on one condition. He wanted the full truth about Hideo and why his mother had been pushed to suicide. Kaori gave him surprising information. Armed with that, Takuya returned to the checkpoint, went home, and exposed Hideo. He laid out everything, including how Hideo staged fake gangsters. When Hideo demanded proof, Takuya threw down Kaori's photos showing Hideo dealing with criminals. Cornered, Hideo fled. Takuya chased after him, determined to send him to jail. But the coward ran too fast. Fortunately, Kaori ambushed him with a flower pot to the head. Takuya recounted all of Hideo's crimes to Kaori and left him to her. He rushed home just in time to stop his mother from taking her life. He slapped her to bring her back to reality. He pleaded with her. Even if he didn't fully understand her pain now, he would try. She was all he had left. During the argument, she sometimes referred to herself by her real name rather than mother. Calmed down, she accepted his promise to prove her innocence. Takuya vowed to do so, even if he had to go through countless timelines. The next morning, Takuya saw his mother off to work and returned to class. There, Eriko dumped a mountain of overdue homework on him, punishment for all his skipping. Suddenly, an announcement summoned him again. Happily, he handed the homework to Yuki. This time, Kaori wanted to meet. She told Takuya that thanks to her connections, Hideo had been kicked out of Geotech, though it frustrated Takuya that he wasn't jailed. Kaori had a plan to ensure his mother would never see Hideo again. When Takuya asked what she wanted with the access card, she said, "If you want to know, become my partner." That night, they executed a plan to infiltrate the research lab. Security was tight. Kaori would go in through the front and open the back door for Takuya. Inside, a meeting was happening to decide how to deal with his mother. Kaori said once they passed this door, she could help clear her name. Takuya saved a checkpoint here, but the light on the door had to turn green first. Kaori went to the control room. A girl inside who had helped Takuya before unlocked the door. Inside were many mysterious stones. Kaori explained Geotech's true goal, to excavate these stones. As they ventured deeper, Takuya discovered a new glowing mineral. His mother had named it Sakai Stone. something his father had been deeply interested in. First discovered beneath Triangle Mountain, it had a unique property. It reacted with human thought and produced immense energy. Some called it a living mineral, but it had a weakness. Exposed to air, it rapidly degraded. That's why crystallizing it was necessary. Sakai stone was the only sample, and it was what his stepmother had been researching. Hidio's real aim was to frame her and steal the stone, so they decided to make it look like the stone had been stolen and pin it on Hideo. For his mother's sake, Takuya destroyed the containment unit. Alarms rang out. Takuya thought they had succeeded. But Kaori betrayed him, attacking him. Hideo appeared. The two had been in cahoots the whole time, planning to dump all blame on Takuya. But Takuya trusted his instincts. He immediately returned to the checkpoint. Still, he hadn't figured out how to beat the two. He repeated the same steps and intentionally got caught to learn their motives. They explained, since his mother was already disgraced, adding a criminal son would ruin her completely. Kaori was a corporate spy, blackmailing companies for profit and then exposing them through her journalism. Her employer was someone at Takuya's school. Then they fled. But Takuya said they were naive. He had stolen a walkie-talkie from a sleeping guard, and their entire confession had been recorded. They were arrested. Thanks to Takuya, his mother could continue her research. It turned out that Takuya's father had asked her to crystallize the Sakai stone. The glow disappeared when exposed to air. His father had left detailed notes in his diary. His mother confirmed it. He had still loved Takuya's real mother. That's why he had researched the stone. Suddenly, Takuya began glitching. His stepmother wasn't surprised. She said it was time for him to leave. In his father's journal, there was mention of parallel worlds. She didn't know which one Takuya came from, but she hoped he would return to the one where he truly belonged. And just like that, Takuya vanished. He met his father, who said, "Karma is unchangeable. This is the correction of chaos." It seemed that Takuya had not been allowed to remain in that world. You will be sent back to the starting point and have to begin everything again, though with a few changes. How does he know this? He says it's because he stands beside the Rena tree, which governs all events, past, present, and future. He reminds you one last time, karma governs everything in life. If you want to uncover its secret, you must first explore history. Time rewinds to the moment when Takuya was held at gunpoint by Mr. Rizuji and then teleported away. He returns home and sleeps until morning. He wakes up at 8:39 a.m. on July 26, 1994, 5 minutes later than the original timeline. This marks the start of summer break. He heads to school to check things out. Mr. Ryuzuji is still discussing an overnight meeting. Takuya stops by the infirmary to look for Ms. Eriko. However, only Kana is there. Sure enough, her necklace looks very familiar. She leaves shortly after. While waiting for Eriko, Takuya notices her clothes there. Just as he picks them up, Mio walks in and immediately calls him a pervert. Takuya leaves the clothes with Mio and exits the room. This time, he runs into Mitsuki, who takes him up to the rooftop. Again, she brings up the strange changes in Mr. Ryuzuji, from someone who didn't even like smoking to becoming addicted. Even the teacher's mother mentioned that her son had changed. Takuya adds that Ryuzuji has been seen interacting with outsiders, including the journalist Kaori and a detective he hired. Takuya also remembers that, in a conversation between his mother and Ryuzuji, the teacher mentioned something about the curse of the third victim. Takuya says he'll be dropping off some research materials at Ryuzuji's house later, and will use the opportunity to investigate and report back to Mitsuki. Afterwards, Takuya and Yuki team up to finish their assignments using all their knowledge. Once done, they prepare to head to Ryuzuji's house. Mio wants to come along too. Takuya invites Kana as well, but she refuses. She says Ryuzuji gives off a scent that's different from any human. On the way, the trio senses that someone is following them. Upon arriving at the Ryuzuji estate, an elderly woman greets them. Yuki senses a gloomy atmosphere. He notices an old storage shed. According to the old woman, the estate was originally built 400 years ago and later renovated, though it still looks run down. It's as if that shed came back from the past. They soon realize the old lady is Ryuzuji's mother. Before entering, she warns them. Her son is no longer the man he once was. He has changed. They meet Mr. Ryuzuji inside. Though the place is huge, it feels spacious because there's barely any furniture. He threw out everything unrelated to his research. He shows them an ancient 400-year-old tapestry. In it, people are being scorched by sunlight, and there's a European-style church depicted. This further supports Takuya's father's theory. Ryuzuji admits he doesn't like the tapestry, but Kodai, Takuya's father, found it fascinating, so he kept it, trusting Kodai's exceptional instincts. Mio and Yuki stay behind to sketch the tapestry, while Takuya steps outside with Ryuzuji for a private talk. He asks what Ryuzuji and his father were researching. It was a long journey. Kodai and Ryuzuji were once classmates, both pursuing the hidden factors of history, those undocumented in any book. Eventually, Kodai was expelled from the academic community. Ryuzuji remained fascinated by Kodai's 400-year cycle theory and invited him to his research institute. Kodai chose Triangle Mountain as his base to study both the cycle and a mysterious civilization called the Takanawa Mahara. Kodai later met physicist Eureka. The three of them engaged in lively debates. Eureka focused on a unified theory grounded in quantum mechanics. Ryuzuji chose to study the human being itself. Kodai focused on the concept of immutability. A true researcher, Ryuzuji said, proposes hypotheses about unexplainable events and then tries to prove them. Back to Takuya's question. In Eriko's research logs, there was a mention of a mysterious woman living near Kanomisaki. She had blind eyes, golden hair, and snow-white skin. Her name was Keisha, later changed to Keiko. In other words, she was Takuya's mother. Through research, Kodai grew close to Keiko, and Takuya was the result. Though blind, she contributed significantly to Kodai's work. When Takuya was little and often sick, it was always his mother who took care of him. Ryuzuji then asks Takuya whether his father left anything for him. Suddenly, Ryuzuji's eyes glow, and Takuya becomes dizzy. Ryuzuji believes Takuya has something and demands he hand it over. As he's about to faint, Takuya activates his device. Fortunately, Mio and Yuki walk in, forcing Ryuzuji to stop. The trio then leaves. On their way out, they meet Ryuzuji's mother again. She tells them, sparrows and swallows cannot understand the thoughts of geese and swans. She urges them to reflect on this. That night, Mio investigates the meaning of the old woman's words but finds nothing. She sighs and remembers catching Takuya and Mitsuki in an intimate moment. Suddenly, a book falls from the table, and Mio notices that the pattern of lightning strikes at Kanomisaki looks strikingly similar to the church in Ryuzuji's tapestry. She plans to tell Takuya, but the next day, her father tells her she'll be studying abroad in the US to avoid the recent scandals. She'll leave next week. Meanwhile, Takuya meets Eriko again at school. His head is still aching from Ryuzuji's attack. He wants to skip school, but Eriko promises she'll make him feel good if he attends. Tempted, Takuya pulls her to the infirmary. But instead of a sexy reward, all he gets are some tools she found in storage. Takuya then asks if she knows anything about Nai-Hub or a nub. She says Nai-Hub is a form of hypnosis, but unlike traditional hypnosis, the person remains conscious while under its effects. Kana comes in to rest. After giving her a special massage, Takuya goes to the rooftop to see Mitsuki. He recalls that she also complained about headaches, possibly from Ryuzuji's hypnosis. He checks in on her. She's doing fine. During their chat, it's revealed that Takuya and Mitsuki have had sex. Since then, Mio has hated him. Regardless, if Ryuzuji acts suspicious again, Takuya promises to tell Mitsuki. Back in class, Mio tells Takuya and Yuki about the similarities between the two mountains and the church in the tapestry. She insists they revisit Triangle Mountain by the end of the week to investigate further. She doesn't tell them about her upcoming departure. Later, a new test begins. This time, Ms. Eriko demands they get every question correct to be dismissed. If not, they must redo it until they do. Clearly a trap for a chronic truant like Takuya. But surprise! He finishes in one go. Not because he's smart, but because he used the artifact to return to a checkpoint. Takuya and Mio leave early, while Yuki stays behind. The two go to Mio's house to look for information. She pulls out a book written by Takuya's father, Legacy, which discusses the Takanawa Mahara. It doesn't mention a specific location, but it hints at Triangle Mountain. The inscriptions on two stones are 8,000 years old. Mio suspects they were written by the Takanawa Mahara. She's convinced something lies within Triangle Mountain. As she prepares to leave, her father comes to check on her. Takuya calls for her and accidentally sees her naked. Her scream alerts her father, who hears a boy's voice and rushes off to get his gun. She warns Takuya to run before he gets a bullet for dessert. Just as her father loads the gun, the doorbell rings. He goes to answer it. The visitor is Yuki. Upon opening the door, Mio's dad points the gun at him to scare him off. Takuya and Mio then climb Triangle Mountain and reach the two ancient stones. Mio believes that if the mountain is truly the church from the tapestry, there must be an entrance. They split up to search. Eventually, Mio finds a suspicious area, but as she investigates, she slips and sprains her ankle. Takuya tells her not to push herself and carries her back to the infirmary. There, Mio reveals her father is involved in a corruption scandal tied to Geotech's construction project. She also confirms that she'll be leaving Sakaimachi. Just then, Mitsuki enters. The love triangle drama kicks off. Mitsuki and Mio argue. Mitsuki knows Mio loves Takuya. The more Mio denies it, the clearer it becomes. Mitsuki steps back and tells Takuya to take Mio home. Unbeknownst to them, Yuki overhears everything. The next day, Takuya runs into Mio, who berates him for being heartless. Confused, he heads to where a crowd has gathered and discovers an anonymous letter accusing Mio's father of corruption. Takuya tries to disperse the crowd, but people accuse him of suppressing free speech. He responds that free speech only applies if you're brave enough to own your words. Anonymous slander is cowardice. Meanwhile, Mio's father is being hounded by the press. Mio herself becomes the target of gossip at school. She retreats to the research room, where she runs into Yuki. He offers her support. Takuya tries to explain things to her, but Mio brushes him off and walks away. Takuya begins to suspect Yuki, though he lacks proof. He vents to Mitsuki on the rooftop, but she's not much help either. At Mio's house, reporters continue swarming. Inside, she begins preparing for one last trip to the mountain. She wrote a letter to her father and then left. On Takuya's side, while heading to the infirmary, he ran into Yuki, who seemed to be going somewhere. At the infirmary, Kana was running a fever again and was being cared for by Miss Eriko. The moment she saw him, Kana walked away. Takuya and Miss Eriko discussed the anonymous informant. On TV, it was also announced that Mio's father had resigned as mayor, and the city council had ordered all support for the Geotech project to be withdrawn. Back home, Takuya looked for Mio's phone number, intending to call her. But before he could dial, his phone rang. It was his stepmother. She said she'd be home late due to some sponsor-related issues. As for the families of the lightning strike victims, she had already settled things cleanly. In this timeline, she also had no ties to Mio's father. However, she reminded Takuya to keep an eye on Mio. She hadn't done anything wrong. The sins of the parents shouldn't be carried by the children. Taking her advice to heart, Takuya decided not to call, but to visit Mio in person. There, he ran into the journalist Kaori again. As always, she tried to extract information from him. Once again, she pulled the "if you want my help, you have to give me info" routine. Takuya refused to answer. But suddenly, Yuki came running up, saying that Mio had run away from home. He heard it from the family staff and read the letter she left. He believed she hadn't gone far. The two of them split up to search. While looking around the school, Takuya ran into Mitsuki. Once she learned what had happened, she also agreed to help. Just after Takuya left, Mitsuki was struck by another headache. She recovered quickly and continued the search for Mio. When Takuya searched at the beach, he met Kana again. He asked her about Mio, and she said Mio was in a dangerous place, the Triangle Mountain. Takuya rushed back to inform Zuki and Mitsuki. They packed their gear and headed there quickly. Sure enough, they found a cave that Mio had dug next to two large rocks. They had to find Mio before dawn, otherwise the police would intervene, and things would get complicated. Takuya planned to go in with Mitsuki and told Yuki to keep watch outside, but Yuki insisted on going in too. After some arguing, he finally confessed that he was the one who reported Mio's father. He deeply regretted what he had done and needed to apologize to Mio. He loved her and acted out of jealousy. Takuya, furious, punched him. Then he made Yuki promise to apologize to Mio once they found her. Takuya and Yuki went in together, while Mitsuki agreed to call the police if they didn't come out by morning. Before going in, Takuya saved a checkpoint. Then they entered. Surprisingly, Mio had managed to dig out a tunnel this big by herself. Takuya even discovered an underground water stream. Going deeper, they came across a door, and after some struggle, managed to open it. Inside, they found a large underground area with a human skeleton. Yuki found the place strangely familiar. It was the underground base of the demon god Gengi, a once powerful leader of a wicked organization. He enslaved innocent people and forced them into hard labor. It sounded ridiculous, but they couldn't rule it out. There were bones and medicine here. Maybe it had been a prison or a mine. Some clothing remnants looked ancient. Further in, they found a hole. On a wall, they discovered a secret passage. Inside were more skeletons, possibly prisoners. Near one skeleton were markings like those on the two stones outside, along with Mio's backpack. She likely stopped here to write something and then got lost. Yuki, worried for Mio, suddenly ran off deeper into the tunnel. He unexpectedly fell into a trap hole. Takuya chased after him and climbed down to find Yuki dying from injuries caused by the trap. Even then, Yuki urged Takuya to find Mio and apologize on his behalf. Takuya tried to help, but it was too late. Yuki died. Unwilling to let his friend die like this, Takuya reloaded the checkpoint. This time, he forced Yuki to stay outside, saying he'd only be a burden. Then, he and Mitsuki went in. They reached the place where Mio's backpack was. As Takuya picked it up, a tremor caused the floor to collapse beneath them. Fortunately, neither was hurt. With a flashlight, they noticed a newer-looking skeleton nearby. Next to it was a notebook. It turned out to be the journal of Dr. Eureka, who had once worked with Takuya's father. Inside were cryptic notes about fear and unknown forces pressing in on her. The key to unlocking history's greatest mystery might lie in Triangle Mountain. These ruins had existed for millennia. Eureka regretted not bringing the whole team. The ruins were unlike any known civilization. She suspected this was caused by a dimensional overlap between timelines, an event theorized by Takuya's father to occur every 400 years. For example, the Takanawa Mahara people may have originated from another timeline and crossed over into Japan, introducing a foreign culture. Eureka studied the electromagnetic fields and gravity in Sakaimachi and concluded that a dimensional event had occurred there before. She was still searching for the cause, but died before finding it. Still, her passion for uncovering the truth never died. She remembered the moment Takuya's father entrusted her with something she later named the reflector device. Suddenly, their flashlight went out, and Mitsuki began acting strangely upon learning Takuya had the artifact. Seemingly hypnotized, she pulled out Ryuzuji's handgun and demanded he hand it over. Mitsuki tried to regain control of herself, but failed. Takuya ran off. He ventured deeper and found a stone coffin. Desperate, he hid inside. But when Mitsuki approached, the coffin suddenly collapsed and dropped Takuya into a glowing underground lake. Luckily, Mio was there and pulled him up. Takuya was relieved she was safe. He was amazed by the glowing water, but Mio said it wasn't the water. It was the rocks beneath. Takuya jokingly wondered if it was Sakai stone. They began searching for an exit. Mio had read Dr. Eureka's journal too. If her theory about multiple timelines was true, it would explain why the civilizations here don't appear in Japan's recorded history. A tremor struck again. A falling rock caused Mio to stumble into the water and get soaked. Later, they lit a fire. Takuya wanted to find a way out, but Mio asked him to stay. She didn't want to be alone. They talked about everything that had happened. Takuya admitted he was the one who reported her father. But Mio already knew it was Yuki. There was no point blaming him now. Mio then asked Takuya to kiss her. She wanted this to be her most beautiful memory before death. Takuya kissed her on the forehead and promised they'd escape together. He fed her and let her rest. He debated whether to rewind time, but realized he didn't know the path back or whether he'd see Mio again. He decided to rest a bit. Then someone called him. It was his mother in a vision. She told him to help the one he loved before she disappeared. Waking up, he told Mio about the dream. They headed to a waterfall where his mother had stood in the vision. Shining the flashlight, something glittered in the water. Takuya reached in and found a gem. At this point, he confessed everything to Mio. If she had read Eureka's notebook, she'd know about the reflector device. He had it. Mio was shocked and saddened. If Takuya rewound time now, her kiss would vanish. Takuya reassured her and promised to get her out. There was a path behind the waterfall. Outside, Yuki tried to call the police, but Kana stopped him. After hearing everything, she was disappointed. No one had listened to her warnings. If they reached that place, they'd face death. Inside, Takuya and Mio followed the path. They heard sounds and traced them to a ruined room with a book on the floor, which crumbled when touched. Perhaps it was truly 8,000 years old. Takuya picked up a sword nearby, just in case. They followed the sound, now clearly mechanical. They found a stone door. Using the sword, Takuya pried it open. Inside was a giant machine, hundreds of meters tall. According to Mio, it had likely been here for centuries. Outside, Kana was trying to prevent the machine from activating, as it could kill many people. Inside, Takuya and Mio encountered Mitsuki again. She explained the tower was a lightning generator. At that moment, it was daytime, and Geotech was beginning operations. If they tried to extract the Sakai stone, the device would activate and produce lightning. The light depicted in the mural was the light that scorched people alive. Mitsuki had known about the device's existence for a long time but didn't know how to enter. Thanks to Takuya and Mio, they had finally made it in. Mitsuki demanded the artifact. The machine started firing lightning and causing quakes. Takuya tried to bring Mitsuki back to her senses. After an intense struggle, she regained control. But she was still under Ryuzuji's command. Not wanting to harm them, she took her own life and was crushed by falling rocks. While Takuya was still in shock, Mio urged him to use the artifact and rewind time. She didn't want Mitsuki to die a slave. She wanted to save her. Takuya still hesitated. He wanted to get Mio out first. He used the sword to destroy the machine, then fled with Mio. They reached what looked like the bottom of a well. Suddenly, Kana and Yuki appeared above and lowered a rope to rescue them. To their surprise, they had emerged inside Ryuzuji's mansion. Takuya asked how they knew, and Kana simply said someone tipped her off. Yuki then apologized to Mio. He admitted his mistakes and was forgiven by Mio. At this moment, Takuya began to experience a distortion. It seemed that this timeline was not accepting him. Kana also knew about the disturbance in the timeline. Although Takuya couldn't save Mitsuki in this timeline, he promised Mio that he would save her in another timeline. After saying this, Takuya vanished. He then met with his father again. Takuya questioned him about the device and what that bastard Ryuzuji was after. His father told him to use his brain if he had one. He was also planning to write to Takuya about Ryuzuji, but halfway through his father realized that Ryuzuji might not even be human, but something else. Takuya would understand in time. In his third appearance in this timeline, after being transported, Takuya didn't immediately go home to sleep. He went to a public phone to call Mitsuki. Once he confirmed that she was safe, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. This time, Takuya was clear about what he had to do: save Mitsuki and uncover the true motives of the old man, Ryuzuji.